Hello, I am Dr. Eli Camp. Welcome. This is my podcast, Vital Wisdom. And this is where I talk about health, wellness, homesteading, raising children, and lots of other topics, all from the perspective of vitalism. I believe I've seen and taught others how the body can heal itself if it's given what it needs, it's not poisoned, and the innate healing ability of the body has been supported, not suppressed. It is my intention to bring what I have learned in my life, especially the last 24 years of being a physician, to help you be your own best doctor. Hope you enjoy the episodes, and thanks for being here. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Vital Wisdom with me, Dr. Eli Camp. And I have a special guest today, Dr. Sparks, which I'll let her introduce herself in just a minute. As always, on Vital Wisdom, we're talking about the vitalistic approach to helping the body reestablish health, since the body has this amazing, wonderful self-healing ability that we were born with. And as long as we're giving the body what it needs and we keep the poisons out, or the things that prevent the body from healing itself efficiently, and we are stimulating that innate healing ability, what we see is a body that gets better. And when a body's better, it doesn't have symptoms of illness because it's not sick anymore. And there's so much stuff going on in the world today, right? It's not just that we have to heal our bodies or assist our bodies in healing. We're healing humans and the planet, and so much stuff is going on. So I'm really excited to have you here, Dr. Sparks. Thanks for being here. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you for having me. I always love talking about vitalistic medicine. It's my passion. It's what makes me happy. So, if you need me to be quiet, tell me.
Right?
Just talk. I am a naturopathic doctor, but then I also, after I graduated, now it's called Sonoran, University of Health Sciences, I went and got a 4-year degree master's in Chinese medicine as well, but it was classical Chinese medicine as well as TCM, because I felt like that really combined well with vitalistic naturopathic medicine. Mm-hmm. And then I was working part-time while going to get my master's, and then I moved up to work with Dr. Sensenig before he passed. And then I've been working mainly acupuncture in person, and actually a lot of naturopathic medicine with Dr. Susan Cucchiara in telehealth. So that's been kind of a journey, because I always envisioned it to be different, but I'm sure it will, everything changes, right? Sure. And then you had asked me about kind of like what got me into naturopathic medicine. I used to work in television. I was working in Hollywood, and I got a certification in massage. Oh. And so I was doing that like on the weekends, and people started asking me a lot of questions. I've always been interested in health because my mom went to a naturopathic doctor when I was young. And so I was trying to answer questions for people, but I couldn't, sometimes they were complicated. I was like, I think I need more education, and then it just kind of came to me one day, like, you should go back to school and become a naturopathic doctor. And I don't even know why it came to me. Like, it was kind of like a download kind of thing, and I just started crying, and I had always promised myself I would never go back to school. So the fact that I went and got a doctorate and a master's is like beyond me.
Yeah, we've got a corruption in our sound. Something happened.
Oh no.
Yeah. I don't know what happened, but you're garbly now. Maybe turn your mic on or off and then back on.
Is that better?
That's much better.
Okay. Yeah, I wonder what happened.
I don't know. Sometimes the signal gets worse, but that's okay. My folks are used to little glitches like that. That happens.
On the farm.
On the farm, yes. So you really wanted to gain knowledge and then, of course, wisdom in order to help people who were asking you, and then of course future people to come to ask you, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Now you said you do acupuncture in person. Where is in person? Where's your office?
So for the acupuncture, I'm in Duxbury, Massachusetts.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I'm also seeing people in Connecticut occasionally because that's where I was living before I'm currently helping my father.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so doing that and then telehealth. So and
Very
that's
cool.
through Naturally Sue Wellness that I'm doing the telehealth.
Yeah, and that means you can see people all over the world.
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah, that's
it's
really
been
cool.
great because as you know, people come to us a lot of times when they've tried everything else and they're at a loss. And so they have more opportunities now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. A lot of times, unfortunately, and I think that I might be seeing a shift in this, which is really good. A lot of times people come to a naturopathic doctor or TCM practitioner or any of the what's considered alternative health practitioners as a very last resort because they've tried everything else and nothing's working. And that's so unfortunate because from the very beginning, right, we are chronic health masters, right? Your alternative health practitioners are really the ones who should be handling almost all chronic health, not only in our country, but around the world. And allopathic medicine, although, right, they're branching out into trying to understand lifestyle and that stuff. But until just recently, they were the masters at emergency care. And your alternative health practitioners are even really good with many acute issues. Um, but surgery or to save, this emergency care, that's where allopathic medicine used to really shine. And I'm hoping that this shift is happening to where people realize you don't wait until you're so sick that you can't get out of bed, that you go find someone who's a master at restoring the body to health so that it can do its self healing. But we'll have to see. So, we are going to talk, I believe we're talking about mold and mold toxicity. This couldn't be a more important topic because from this is what I've heard from lots of folks when they come in is they come in convinced, not all of them, but many of them come in convinced they have mold toxicity. And they have been sort of gaslighted by the entire field of medicine to think that it's all in their head. You don't have anything on lab tests, and it's so unfortunate because the symptoms are very real and very debilitating once you become mold toxic. So, talk to us about mold toxicity.
Well, I'd like to actually start by doing a little add on to what you just said
Yeah, go
about
for
people
it.
coming, you know, last minute kind of thing. What I'm finding a lot with the mold patients is that they've actually gone to other functional medicine doctors and alternative doctors, and a lot of times are, on this many supplements and not getting better.
Right.
They're like, oh, they gave me this in a binder, or whatever it
Right.
is. And 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 that's the difference. I think it's hard to really describe sometimes in limited amount of time the difference between vitalistic naturopathic medicine and naturopathic medicine and functional medicine. Like
Yes,
they're
I
kind
agree.
of like in different realms. They're similar but different.
Agree. They share some similar principles, and it seems that all of those kinds of practitioners understand the body can heal itself. But really, when you step into the field of vitalism and vitalistic naturopathic medicine, these people, we and our colleagues, understand how to help restore health to the body so that it can go about its self healing, which it was designed to do. I mean, we were created this way, right? I had early on in my podcast, I did an episode where I talked about if you cut yourself on something, let's say I get a cut on my hand and I keep it clean and I do nothing to it, although I could speed it up with some things, but if I did nothing to it, you could literally sit there and watch that heal up over 5 to 7 days. It heals itself. We don't have to do a darn thing for the body. for it to know how to repair a cut. And this is true for every single thing that goes wrong with the body, other than when something happens and you could lose your life within minutes if you don't give it some different kind of care. And just because we can't see it doesn't mean our cardiovascular system isn't self-healing, our nervous system isn't self-healing. That's how we're made. We're made to self-heal, right? And yeah, you're right. These I have nothing bad to say about any other kind of doctor, but throwing a bunch of supplements and doing a bazillion dollars in tests doesn't necessarily take you on that path to recreating health so that your body can do its self-healing job. I agree. Okay. So mold
Yeah,
nasty stuff, isn't it?
it is. And a lot of times we find it
Your
after.
mic is doing that again. Turn it off, turn it back on.
Can you hear me again? Is
Yeah.
it good now?
Yeah.
What is going on?
I don't know, but I'll let you know if it garbles.
Yeah. Just
Ah!
So the thing with mold is a lot of times if someone doesn't have an obvious frank water damage issue, then a lot of times we're finding it after we've worked with someone like 6 months,
Okay.
because we've, worked on, maybe they've had some Lyme and co-infections, maybe they have EBV, maybe they have all these other different things going on, and we're working on them and working on trauma, working on all these different things, and then it's still not resolving. Or something is like a lot of people come to us, right, with GI issues.
Right.
And, and we're working on GI and things are getting a lot better. And then, 4 months later, boom, we're back where we were. That's when I start going, mold. I feel like the mold it tends to be that underlying smoking gun that disrupts the immune system, and then everything else goes haywire.
Mm-hmm.
So then we'll test, we'll do mycotoxin testing a lot of times. If they can't afford those types of tests, we'll do some blood work. There are some mold markers like a C4A or a TGF beta that we can, kind of put puzzle pictures together and see. But you'll be surprised how people will be like, no, there's no mold. And then they'll get this mycotoxin test back that's like off the charts, and they'll go, well, I wonder if it could be blue, whatever it is.
Right.
Oh,
Right.
you mean like the window that's leaking? Yeah, it could be that. Yeah.
Right. Right.
So,
well, can't it even be things like people move into an office or a new house or apartment, and the previous owners did some kind of painting, or like, I'm not saying there was anything nefarious like a cover up happening, but you can see mold when it's on the outside of things, and people go wipe it down with bleach and give it a coat of paint and they're like, oh, it's good, but that was the tip of the iceberg as far as the dwelling, or right, or even cars that leak.
ooh, that's a big one.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we get too deep into it, what are the so I know my listeners are sitting here thinking, oh man, I wonder if I have mold.
I have mold.
So what kinds of things are just red flags that would make people at least be interested in investigating if mold is an issue?
I would say the top 3 would be severe fatigue, brain fog, and chronic infections. Like you're just getting sick all the time and you don't have kids in daycare. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it
vectors.
Yeah, little vectors everywhere.
Yeah.
So, it's like, even still, like a lot of times you're just getting every single cold, every single flu, and just never well, or ending up, you get a cold or flu and you end up with pneumonia, bronchitis.
Right.
Those types of things. Those would be the top 3. And then I think like gut issues, or another
what about
one.
joint pain?
Oh yeah, joint pain and myalgias, like fibromyalgia.
Yep.
Big time chronic fatigue, big time mold underlying causes. Because that's the other thing, is like, we know from learning differential diagnosis that those were created to have discussions and know which medications, right, to give.
Yes.
But they're just names of
Yeah,
syndromes, and there's usually a root cause.
exactly.
Right.
And for many times, 100 people in a room, though those 100 people each have a different underlying cause. Yeah, it was a convenience thing to give chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia a name like that. I agree with you. So what about skin stuff,
Oh, yes.
right?
Actually, how did I even miss that? Because I had a skin problem. Back when I lived in North Carolina, I was in an apartment that I didn't realize had flooding in the basement. And 3 months, 4 months in, I started getting hives. I ended up with systemic full body hives for 2 years. I
Wow.
didn't even know where it came from or why. I didn't realize until in retrospect when I got the mold certification, like, oh my gosh, that's what it was. I even went to Dr. Sensenig and Dr. Tom, like, you know, I was like, I don't know what to do. But none of us really kind of knew about mold back then.
Right.
You know?
No, yeah. So this is like, I'd say the last 15 years that we're really understanding, well, how pervasive mold is in the human body. We're the perfect incubator for mold. We're dark, we're wet, right? We're the perfect
Warm.
temperature.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And mold isn't you can't think of it just like you don't think of viruses and bacteria in this way. The mold's not floating out there waiting to attack you. What happens is the mold is simply looking for, well, it starts with spores, right? Off. Okay, so they're just looking for a place to live and survive, just like bacteria, just like viruses. And when you find an environment that you can thrive in, just like humans, well, boom, you get there. Then this thing about mold, and correct me if I'm wrong, and I don't have extra training in mold per se, but I do remember that it's polymorphic, right? It goes through several different kinds of life cycles and different forms. And you can think it's gone, but it's because it's in one phase of its life cycle. It's not really gone. And then you get this bloom in the body, and then you get all of these symptoms, right? Did I just give that a good nutshell description?
Yes, that I would say that that's true
Do
for
your mic.
active.
Do your
Oh,
mic again. Is it a internal mic or an external mic?
it's an internal mic.
Uh-oh. Well, your mic might be going out. I hate to say that too. You might have to
Oh,
get an external mic.
yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, my cat
That's
wanted
okay.
to come in. Um, the I was gonna say yes, that is true for active growing mold. But the thing that we're learning more about recently is mycotoxins.
Oh,
So
okay.
mycotoxin illness. So when it's kind of like how Lyme, there was so many Lyme deniers for so long, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then we learned more about Lyme, and oh, now people can have chronic Lyme. Yes. Same with mycotoxin illness. So before, traditional medicine said that uh, mold spores would get into the lungs and you could get asthma, bronchitis, things like that. But now we're learning that mycotoxins, so spores are about 1 to 10 microns big, large. And then a mycotoxin is zero point 0.1. So they're smaller. They can
Wow.
go through walls.
Whoa.
They're harder to filter out, so you need really good air filters. And they are the chemicals that are made by molds, and there's also endotoxins that are made by bacteria that are chemical warfare to keep other molds and bacteria away from their food because they want to
Oh,
eat. And so that's really what's making people really ill, other than respiratory illnesses. So, and they can go in through skin, food, and nasal passages. They're much smaller.
okay. That's scary. Now I'm
Yeah.
scared. Okay.
Well,
All right.
I learned from Dr. Krista, I did her mold certification course. She's amazing. And she said, the people who are scared of mold are the people that do the best. Right.
They're more vigilant.
Yes. And she always anthropomorphizes the mold. She's like, well, the mold wants you to sit on your couch and not remediate and not do anything so it can just eat and have a good
Yeah.
day.
Yeah. Be
So,
happy.
yeah. I
Yeah.
had one to say, does the mold really think that? I was like, no.
No, 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 no. But that's a built-in biochemical genetic drive of any organism is to find the best place to have your happiest life, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's right. People do that too. It's why they moved to Phoenix.
That's why I moved away from Phoenix.
Well, that's why I moved away from Phoenix too. But we want to find our happiest life.
Yeah.
And all organisms do that. Okay, so we can get spores, but what you're saying is more importantly because they transmit more easily
Mycotoxins. Yeah.
is the mycotoxin. Okay. So, and you don't necessarily know if you have mold in your environment.
Well, that's the other thing is mycotoxins don't smell.
Ah,
So people will say, "Oh, it doesn't smell." That's a mold spore that you're smelling, right?
and
And
mycotoxins come from mold.
yes, so the
Okay.
mold is making a chemical to keep other molds away,
Okay.
and
Okay.
it's toxic, and it's also toxic to us.
Right. Right.
And it can get through walls and cracks and things much easier than a spore can.
I'm not
So,
letting my 16-year-old listen to this because she's convinced that there's things out there she should be afraid of she can't see. So,
well, as you know, as a vitalistic doctor, like our body is made to detox and to get rid of things. The problem is there's a couple problems. One, if you have the HLA kind of genetic predisposition to be affected by molds.
okay.
Two, how is your terrain,
Okay.
right? And three, how bad is the infection of the house or wherever you're
What's
at.
the exposure level? So
Yeah.
those three things she just said are so important because yes, absolutely. And I know we're going to hear more about this as we talk this morning, but that is the key to not only mold, mycotoxin, all of that, but to bacteria, to viruses, to all the stuff that's out. There's a trillion, they say to us, right? There's a trillion things out there that are organisms that are just trying to survive and find a place to thrive, right? And our defense is not to go take 5,000 different vaccines and all of these different antimicrobials and antibiotics and antifungals. This is not how we protect ourselves because, like you just said, our body's built to take care of that stuff, right? So let's talk about that. Let's talk about these sorts of ways that, like, is there any hope? Can we get rid of this from our body?
Yeah. Well, I do have to be the bearer of some kind of bad news and say, for the people who are dealing with mold illness, if you stay in the place that is loaded with mold and you don't remediate and or move, then it's going to be hard. And
Or
you're not
almost
going to have
impossible.
100%. Yeah, you're not going to have 100% kind of cure there. It's just not going to happen.
Right.
And that that's the hardest part because it can be very expensive, right? To
Yes.
remediate or move, you know.
When
And
you
so,
say
but
remediate, when you say remediate, what are you talking about when you remediate?
so remediation involves having a really good inspector come.
Do your mic again.
Remediation involves having a really good inspector come and find the mold source. I do have a handout that I can share with people. I'm trying to think. I think it's on my website. If how to find a good mold inspector,
Okay.
because that can be very difficult. There's all these different types of inspections that can be done.
Okay.
Then once you find the mold, you don't want the person who fixes the mold to be the same person that inspected the mold because there's a conflict of interest there, right?
Got it.
Because then it'd be like, yeah, I fixed it, now it's good. And like,
Yeah. Okay. Right.
yeah. So it's two different companies. He can recommend someone, but two different companies. Then you have a mold remediation company. So it's a company that comes in. Now, what they should be doing is, putting up plastic, making sure that, the mold spores, when they start tearing up walls or whatever, it's not going to get to other parts of the home. They should
Okay.
have big filters moving air out, things
Okay.
like that, done properly. And then they should get it all the way down to the studs or wherever it is, they shouldn't just spray bleach. Let's put it that way.
Well, yeah, which so many people do, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they're like, if I can't see it, it's not there anymore. That's not true.
I just had a lady patient the other day who, told me and Dr. Sue a couple of times that she didn't think she had mold, and we were like, I really do think you do. And then she said that she had taken her phone and was like underneath her covers, and then the light from the phone shone through the covers, and she saw black in her covers. And what she was doing was washing the comforter, and then putting it in the dryer, but it wasn't like fully dry. So then she put it on the bed to finish drying. And you have skin cells. Skin cells, mold eats skin cells,
Oh
right?
man.
So the dampness in the food, she was sleeping in mold every night.
Oh my goodness.
So that kind of remediation would involve,
A new blanket.
obviously immediately throwing the blanket out, but
Maybe a
then
new
also
mattress.
getting a new mattress, cleaning down the room, putting all of your curtains and everything that was in there through the laundry, using, there's a company that I like called Microbalance Health Products that has like non-toxic mold cleaners.
Oh, cool.
So, they have a laundry additive that you could put in with your laundry, stuff like that. And then, and then if you had like, say, a headboard, if it was lacquer, you could clean it. If it was porous, I would get rid of it.
Right, right.
Stuff like that. So that's all kind of remediation.
But people who are sick due to mold toxicity, I found that they're going to do just about darn near anything that they need to do so they can feel better. Because there isn't. So here's what I hear you saying so far, leading up to the next question I have, of course, is that this is a multi-step process. It's not like McDonald's where you go through and you get a hamburger and French fries and now you're not hungry anymore, right? It is there's many things that need to be done, including you mentioned two other things. So terrain, your body, we'll talk about that. And then I'm sure there's things that you use with people to assist the body in get okay, let's talk about that.
It's funny that you mentioned that because that was like one of my main things that I wanted to talk about, because I have so many people come to me from other practitioners saying, they put me on an antifungal and a binder and I'm
Right.
not any
Right.
better.
Right.
Yeah, so it definitely is a process. And the terrain part where we say, how is the body? That's so step one, getting out of the mold, getting the mold away from you, right? Step two, we call it foundations, which is fixing the terrain. So that's diet, that's lifestyle. There are certain foods like peanuts we know have more mycotoxins in them. So, eliminating foods like that, maybe not eating as many mushrooms, things that are fungal, maybe decreasing sugar intake because we all know that fungi loves to eat starch.
Yeah.
So, just, kind of making it inhospitable to the fungus, making our body not a happy home for the fungus, right? And then moving on to like the next step, which would be working on, I call it like drainage and detox. So making sure the emunctories are open. Emunctories are organs of elimination. So that's a big thing. I do a lot of biotherapeutic drainage. We talk a lot about that. And I think that's kind of a key difference between what we do and what some other practitioners will do with mold patients.
Right.
Is making sure the emunctories are working well, and also remembering that the emotional state is an emunctory, right?
Yes. People
So
forget that, don't they?
yes. And I'll tell you, we'll do trauma work with people, and that will be like the final clincher to help them resolve something. I had a lupus patient that we did work for about 6 months, and then finally I was like, you gotta do this, and she's like, okay, finally I'll do it. And she got off all of her lupus medications, was in remission, and was able to have a baby after they told her she would never be able to.
Oh wow, that is so cool.
But it
Well,
was
it's
this.
interesting that you make that a big part of it, because I was just talking with Dr. Jason Kinley from Spokane, Washington, and he said in his interview, man, a big part of people's healing journey is this memory that they hold of trauma and how it can continue to affect you over the years, and until you get rid of that, you can't necessarily get to the place that you really want to get to. So, okay. And you're in the perfect company here. We talk about terrain all the time and getting the body to because each person has their own level of optimal health. For those of you who are listening to this, We're not all going to be marathon Olympian, runners with, all of that amazing uh the type of health that they have to achieve to be that kind of athlete. We all have a healthy enough place, and it's different for everybody. Your genetics matter, the environment you live in matters, the what you eat, sleep, drink, your social connections, your emotional state. So we make the healthier we are. This is what Dr. Sparks is saying. We're not forcing detox. We're reestablishing the body's natural way to detox, which is through the emunctories. And I did a whole episode on that if that's confusing to y'all. It's still a detox, but it's the body's natural detoxification is to move things through the emunctories. You would call it emuncting instead of detoxing. So we do that, and that starts to make the body a less happy place for the mycotoxin and molds to be. Okay, so we work on that.
Yeah, and then we work on, traditional naturopathic care, which is, tonifying deficiencies, giving the body what it needs, right? Yeah. To help. And then also doing some protection work, so there are things like bioflavonoids that can protect organs from, assault of mycotoxins.
Right.
Oils, really good fats and oils, because mycotoxins, like many chemicals, are fat soluble, right? So Dr. Crinian would say the key to pollution is dilution, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
things like that. And then we get into breaking up biofilms.
Okay.
And then killing, and then binding, because all those things are going to happen around the same time, and then restoring kind of damaged organ systems that may have happened, in that little battle that we just dealt with.
Yeah.
And then working on releasing the trauma of being chronically ill.
Big one. Yes.
And then retesting.
Okay. She makes that sound like a nice, neat little package, right? I want to throw in that along every step of that path is work and commitment and understanding. And you have to first be able to subscribe to the idea that the body can heal itself. And then when you work with someone like Dr. Sparks, she can guide you on that journey, right? And yeah, we probably got to just get all of that stuff out of the body because, right, you mentioned it depends on the load. Well, how much are you exposed to? So if you've been walking around and your body is like full of this stuff, you probably feel like crap. I mean, just to be really blunt, you probably feel really, really sick all the time.
Yeah.
Now, so I have a family member who was remodeling her bathroom. And when she took, I believe, one of the walls down in the bathtub area, she had a massive exposure to black mold. Massive. And I think it was within weeks, maybe within a month, she developed chronic fatigue, right? What we would diagnose as chronic fatigue, so severe that she could be out of bed only for minutes at a time. And it wasn't that she was sleepy. It was that she literally, it's like she wasn't making the ATP. She didn't have the energy to continue to get back up, and she would have to lay down and like recharge right, like a solar battery, and then she could get up for a few minutes and do some stuff. She had to go lay back down. And through her journey, she found when she took antibiotics, she would have weeks to a month and a half, maybe some reprieve. She never felt great, but she could get out of bed and she could. Now, is that what we see in allopathic medicine where we're suppressing something, or did it kill off enough stuff? Are there co-infections when you're mold toxic? Like, why might that have happened, do you think?
So it was antibiotics, not antifungals?
Yeah. Antibiotic. And it was like erythromycin or something like that. I don't remember which one.
Well, one thing I will say is, we're learning a lot about mycotoxins, but what I touched on briefly before is endotoxins. There may have been a bacterial load in those walls as well.
Because if
Um,
the body's fighting mycotoxin, it's kind of like, what's right? This is maybe an important thing for people to realize. The body only has X amount of anything, white blood cells, it only it's like a recipe. We have a limited supply of what we need to work on things in our body. And I would assume mycotoxin is right up there at the top of what the body sees as this is dangerous.
it's definitely a threat, and there are some mycotoxins like the trichothecenes, the black mold. We know that those are possible carcinogens.
Right.
And so they can affect any and all organ systems. That's the other problem. They can cross blood-brain barrier.
Ugh.
Another big problem, right?
Right.
And then the other thing is, like I said before, immunosuppression or dysregulation, and then other things. So, like you said, we have virus and bacteria in us all the time, and now we have immune dysregulation.
Right.
And now, what was keeping that opportunistic Pseudomonas at bay is no longer doing that.
Right.
So, taking an antibiotic could help that.
Okay. So it's not that the antibiotic affected the mycotoxin or the
No.
mold. It's that maybe the body just couldn't address something else that was going on and was contributing to the symptoms. And
Yeah.
okay, that makes sense.
So
So
many opportunistic bugs in us. I mean, I remember being told we had 30 trillion human cells and 300 trillion bacterial cells.
yeah, it's more bacteria than it is us,
And
right?
a lot of them are opportunistic. So you give them the opportunity, the body's dealing with mold and mycotoxins. Okay, now I can go and thrive.
Exactly, exactly. So you mentioned biotherapeutic drainage.
Mm-hmm.
Can you say just a little bit about that? Because I haven't talked about that yet on my
Oh,
podcast.
yeah, so actually, when we were going to naturopathic medical school, we would do a monthly mentorship of about 12 of us with Dr. Dixon Tom. And he was teaching us about undinumber compounds and biotherapeutic drainage. So basically, it's a system of medicine that comes, I believe, from France. And they are looking at the way we eliminate and kind of putting us. I mean, miasms and regular constitutional homeopathy is a little bit different than drainage.
Yeah.
We're looking at miasm as four basic types of what I call eliminators, and then helping those types do their best at eliminating through the emunctories. That's like the most basic way of saying it.
No, that's really good. And so people are probably thinking, well, is it pills? Are they injections? Are they like
Mm-mm.
what is the stuff that's used to do biotherapeutic drainage?
So biotherapy drainage is a concept. It's a philosophy, more so than it is an
Product.
item, a
Okay.
product.
Okay.
And so you can use hydrotherapy to affect
Oh,
drainage. You can
okay.
use homeopathy. You can use combination homeopathy. You can use herbs. Anything that you could do in vitalistic naturopathic medicine.
Okay. So it's understanding the biotherapeutics. It's understand the biome and then you choose the therapeutics that best work with. Okay. So I learned something today. I always thought of it as like the undas, like
So that's
using
one.
that's
That's
one way. There's
one.
other ways.
Yeah. So we
Okay.
actually, so I just took 2 courses through the NMI with Dr. Abel.
Oh
And
yeah, he does that.
yes. And so, but he doesn't,
Your
I mean,
mic.
he uses undas.
Do
Oh.
your mic.
Dr. Abel uses undas, but he also uses single remedies to help with
Okay.
drainage at different potencies. And so we kind of, constitutional homeopaths will be like, oh my God, you guys are crazy. You're using 4 different remedies, or 5 different remedies, but at different potencies,
But
kind
it's a
of.
different application,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I just had this talk with a doctor from India the other day. Um, you have classical or constitutional homeopathy where we use one remedy to treat someone's chronic condition or constitutional nature or that. But then there's no reason why we can't use potentized medicine right? Because people think of homeopathy as little white pellets, but it's really a system of using potentized medicine to assist the body in its self healing. And I like to think of it as practical medicine, right? Our teachers at the Naturopathic Medicine Institute, most of them simply use potentized medicine alongside all of the other great things that make up the field of naturopathic medicine, like hydrotherapy and physical medicine, right? Cranial sacral work and
Oh yeah.
fasting and nutrition and all of the and Chinese medicine, like all of that stuff. You find the perfect blend of what that person's body needs. Yeah, I started my career, you probably know this. I started my career as as a naturopathic doctor and being very vitalistic, but kind of as a purist when it came to homeopathy in the beginning years, where I was like, oh no, we don't use combinations of potentized medicine. We have no idea what that's going to do in the body. And well, I've come full circle to, I would say 60% of my patients who come to me for homeopathic treatment, they're looking for classical homeopathy because, right, that's what they want. But in my other patients, they just want to feel better. They do not care what I pull out of my medicine cabinet or out of my head or out of my pocket. They don't care. Oh, this is what they want to know. Is that going to help my body be healthier and be able to heal itself better so that I don't have these symptoms of illness
And without side effects and suppression.
without side effects and suppression? Absolutely. Does that restore balance to my body?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I agree. So, oh, that's exciting. And that sounds like something I might like to in my free time. Not, but if I can get my chickens to stay in the coop, to understand a little bit more about biotherapeutic drainage. Because literally up until this moment, I just thought of it as like, the UNDA numbers, and you just do but no, that's just one thing. That's so cool. Okay, so people, let's give let's give people some hope here. So they've identified that one, yes, it is mold toxicity. And when we say mold toxicity, does that include mycotoxin toxicity, or do we have to say mold, mycotoxin, blah 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 blah?
Yeah,
Or is
mold
there like an
toxicity.
umbrella?
Yeah, is the umbrella. And then there's kind of like mold allergy illness, which is spores, and then there's mycotoxin illness.
Okay. So they've decided that mold and any of its, things are what's the root of their problem, because their body isn't in the right condition and doesn't have what it needs to overcome it. And they have all these symptoms of illness, and they do remediation, they tune up their own health, so they get the terrain to where it's inhospitable, they get what's there cleaned out, they get through the trauma of being sick, restoring their body. Do you see this happen? Do you see this happen where people get better and
Yeah.
they're like,
Well, I'm
oh
one
my
of them.
goodness? And
I'm one of them. You
you're
know,
one of them.
hence the reason I went and got the additional certification. I'll just tell you a quick little bit about my story.
Yeah.
I had those hives, and I did move out of the place, not realizing that's what was making me sick.
Right.
And then tried, like I said, acupuncture, chiropractic, Dr. Sensing, Dr. Tom, like all these different things. And I was getting better, and I was managing symptoms, but I didn't heal, right?
Yeah.
Until I did three things. One was I started meditating every night for 15 minutes. The other thing was I took a Chinese herbal remedy. And the last thing was I took humic and fulvic minerals to kind of act as a binder, not even realizing that that's what I needed.
Right. Right.
And then, so I started that. That was like my New Year's resolution. I'm going to do these three things. And I
Yeah.
did it faithfully for about 4 months. And then in April, and so my symptoms were, pretty manageable. I maybe have like a few little dots here and there. You know what I mean? In April, I thought I came down with something. Had a malaise, fatigue, had a fever. I'm luckily, I can mount a fever 102.
Good
And
for you.
so Yeah, yes. I'm always proud of myself. So I had a fever, I just had the malaise, and then I had all my hives came back over my whole body. And
Oh, after all that hard work.
but no other symptoms, no upper
Oh,
respiratory, no GI, nothing. And so my brain went, what would Dr. Sensenig say is a healing crisis, right?
uh,
So I just drank water and broth and stayed in my bed and then went to the bathroom and came back and for 2 days broke my fever and I started having Herxheimer, not Herxheimer, Herring's Law of Cure happen, where I started healing from the top down, because obviously I had healed from the inside out, and now it was going from the top down. And the last place I had a hive was on the bottom of my legs, and they went away and never came back.
oh, that's really awesome.
Yeah, I
That's
mean, to be
really
able to
awesome.
see my own medicine happen in my own body, and luckily have mentors that were in my ear, in my head, so I knew what to do.
Yeah, I agree with you. So understanding the laws of healing, the laws of nature are so critical to being able to understand what's happening to your body at any given time. I agree. And for those of you out there, they're uh if you violate these laws, you will end up with symptoms of illness because you haven't worked with the body, you haven't worked with the design and the plan that's in place. It's just like if you don't put gas in your car, the car doesn't run. I just, right, you violate a law of cars, the car law, by not putting gas in your car or not putting oil in your car, right? Or you put dirty gas in your car, you put dirty oil in your car. You're not going to have a car that's going to run at all. It's the same way with the body. There's laws that govern how healthy we are at any given moment. And yeah, so man, I'm so glad you're doing this work. So how what do you have little tests or quiz people can take if they're like, gee, I wonder if I'm mold toxic, or what do they do? Should they set up an appointment with you to have kind of a consultation? Because I'm sure
Yeah.
you recognize it now right away.
Well, yes and no, because there's a lot of overlap with it. Also with Lyme and other co-infections. You know what
Okay,
I
so you
mean?
really
And
need to do a test.
yeah, that's
Yeah,
the best. But yeah, you're gonna be most likely very chronically ill, you
right,
know. Um,
right.
and then I do 10-minute free, discovery calls through naturallysue.com.
Oh, good.
Yeah, and then I have a questionnaire that people can fill out from Dr. Krista
Okay.
and see if it's likely or probable or definite that you got something going on.
Right,
Uh,
absolutely. Okay. So, folks, listen, if you are struggling, regardless of who you're working with, if you are struggling with symptoms that won't go away, and I'm not even going to say just the symptoms we've talked about,
oh, there's more.
right? Just symptoms of illness, and you feel like you're eating well, like you're getting good sleep, like you're taking a bunch of stuff, which you shouldn't be. You all know what I feel about the brown bag supplements, right? If you're on more than 4 or 5 things, it's likely not that you might not need more stuff while you are being treated, but for maintenance, there's just a handful of stuff that we need these days, minerals and a good whole food vitamin, depending on how you eat and where you live and what's in your soil. And if you can't get your fats in, good fat.
Bless
um,
you.
the pollen is out in our neck.
Ah, maybe a liver detox supplement in the spring.
Right, right, exactly. So, but if you have stuff that remains, it does it hurt to investigate? It never hurts to investigate if it's possible that you are being exposed to mycotoxin, to some kind of other mold, like who knows where it could be, especially in certain parts of our country, right?
Well, and anywhere, because even in dry parts you have AC units.
Oh, that's
Like
right.
Phoenix, you have HVAC. You
That's
know,
true. That's
so the
true.
other thing I wanted to really make clear is also, if you're in a family of say 5 and you're the only one that's sick, don't let anyone else in that family tell you you're not sick. because
Thank
they're
you
not.
for saying that.
Yeah.
No, yes, if you know you're not right, listen to your intuition. If you don't feel like it's right and you feel like you're supposed to feel, don't give up. Be like a dog with a bone, man.
I had a family of five. The mom and this one of the sons were, having the illness. The other ones weren't, and we even did some testing, and still, family members were like, I don't think that's it. Da, da, da. They ended up moving, and the son and the mom got better, right? Because we did find mold. Ended up being this whole thing, and even to this day, the son says, "Oh, I'm so glad we moved, so I, could breathe again."
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely. Absolutely.
so
Okay, well, on the screen or in the post will be ways for you to reach out and get in touch with Dr. Sparks. She's amazing. I've known her for a long time. Super high caliber doctor and physician and practitioner. I cannot say enough good things about her. Thank you so much for being here. Is there like a send home message you want to tell our listeners?
Well, I think the big thing is what you just said. Listen to your own body and your intuition. Don't let anybody tell you differently.
Yeah, that's it.
Advocate for yourself. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thanks everybody. I hope you have a wonderful week before you're back on listening to me on the Vital Wisdom. And yeah, thanks for being here. And thanks, Dr. Sparks. I'm so grateful that you shared your knowledge and experience about this. And I know that was the tip of the iceberg. So I have a few patients I actually think I'm gonna send them your way because I think they might have an ongoing exposure to mycotoxin and uh yeah, and since you do that, I'll just let you do that with them.
Okay.
Yeah,
Sounds good. Thank you. Thank you for
awesome.
having me. It was always great
Yes,
talking to you.
yes, are you coming to Phoenix?
I am.
Well, then I'll see you in a few
Yeah,
weeks.
I'm so excited.
Yeah,
I feel
very
like I do
cool.
it like every couple years when I can afford it.
Yeah, me too, me too.
So.
Awesome. Well, listen, have a good week, everybody, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining me today. For those of you who have written in, emailed, and are interested in my books and other offerings, I wrote The Unvaccinated Child as a resource guide for parents and caregivers to navigate childhood illnesses in a natural and healthy way. And while the intended group was the unvaccinated, it turns out it's an important resource for the vaccinated kids as well, since vaccines do not necessarily prevent illness. Smoke Rings is another book I wrote, and that's to help smokers support their health, regardless if they plan to quit or not. So, for people who smoke, love a smoker, used to smoke, continue to smoke, this book helps you be your healthiest version. And when I say it is judgment free, it is absolutely judgment free. You're free to make the choices you make. I'd just like you to find better health while you make those choices. My most recent book, Homeopathy, A Foundational Approach, is really great for someone, whether they're a complete beginner or they've already been practicing homeopathy. It starts at the beginning and it guides the readers through the basics and on into first aid and acute practice so you can start using homeopathy right away. That's the most important thing to me, is to get folks using homeopathy in their everyday life. My workshops and courses can be found at either ecampnd.com or longshadowsranch.net. Have a great week. Again, thanks for joining me and thanks for your support.